second part of our Mod 23 Lesson 3. All right, so we're going to start with power shifts in Europe. All right, Spain and Portugal were very successful because of mercantilism. Both countries had wealthy colonies. Spain, definitely in South America, Portugal over in the eastern side of Africa, even over into India. All right, but while they relied on their colonies for wealth, the northern European countries of England and the Netherlands developed new trade routes and banking industries. All right, the new trade routes and banking, along with increased manufacturing, brought more wealth to England and the Netherlands and began to shifted the economic power in Europe. All right, so Northern European trade routes here. Now, a book was published in the late 1500s that helped traders to find new wealth around the world. That important book was the first atlas. Okay, an atlas is just a collection of maps. Improved maps made possible largely by the discoveries of explorers encouraged traders to find new sources of wealth around the world. Okay, now an atlas today, very few of us would actually look in a book and try to learn things from maps and things like that. We have the internet to do that. Okay, the internet is basically our atlas today, or the cell phone, GPS, that type of stuff. But back in those days, they actually had to use maps, and putting them all into one book made it so much easier for countries and explorers and things like that. All right, so go ahead and answer your question right there. How could these atlases help explorers? All right, now England benefited from increased trade. New trading posts in India and China, along with trade in North American colonies, gave England access to huge markets and many resources. A lot of these resources that they didn't have in England. England's a very small country if we go back and look at this map. England is not very big, just right here. Okay, most of their land was already developed, had been claimed for centuries as the Romans were up there and things like that. Over here in the Americas, all this new land that they could exploit, all the resources, that's what is going to encourage England to keep trading or keep exploring over here in the Americas. Now, the Netherlands also became a great trading power. Dutch merchants formed a company to trade directly with Asia. The Dutch East India Company is what that was called. Okay? This company was the only one with the right to trade between the Netherlands, Asia, and Africa. And the Dutch soon controlled many islands in East Asia, along with trading posts in India, Japan, and Southern America. All right, go ahead and answer that question there. Okay, so now we go to banking. Banking increased trade, created a need for banks, just like the Medicis of Italy. Okay, because there's more trade and things like that at that time in the Renaissance. Same thing now. We need somewhere to put this money. We need to take loans so we can build ships. I might not have the cash to build the ships now, but if I get a loan from a bank, then I can build more ships, pay back later, that type of stuff. People needed depositories or places to securely deposit their money. They also needed places where they could receive the loans. Realizing this, the Dutch set up a bank. Now, Jews were partly responsible for the growth of banking in the Netherlands. They migrated to the Netherlands in the late 1500s to escape religious persecution in other European countries. Okay, because the Dutch government limited the work Jews could do, and because the Christian church did not allow Christians to lend money, many Jews entered the banking business. Okay, so this kind of goes back to the old Reformation and stuff like that. Excuse me. All right. But go ahead and answer why were the Jews in the Netherlands bankers? All right, now we're going to go to market economies. Market economies, because of all the economic activity and development that occurred because of the increased exchange between Europe and Africa, Asia and the Americas, European society changed. A new social group called the middle class began to grow. The middle class had less money than the ruling class, but more money than the lower class. Many in the middle class were business people, and they started buying more manufactured goods, and this led to more demand for goods. Okay? Now, that's a good thing because as a business person, a bigger middle class means you have more customers, things like that. That's one of the hallmarks of the United States is the U.S. is all about making sure that they keep the middle class strong. You don't want too many people in poverty. And of course, not everybody's going to be uber rich, but you want a big middle class that will keep buying goods to have a strong, vibrant economy. All right, so here we go. Now, there were other reasons for the increased demand for manufactured goods. First, Europe's population was growing. More people meant a need for more goods. Second, farmers were growing food at a lower cost. With lower expenses, people had more money to spend on other things like manufactured goods. Finally, the addition of colonies increased demand because they needed to get manufactured goods from Europe. Remember, they couldn't make their own ships in the Americas, in the American colonies. They weren't supposed to make their own clothes. They weren't supposed to make their own furniture and things like that. That was all supposed to be bought from England. But they still needed those things. All right, business people realized that with a higher demand for goods, they could make money by developing new businesses and finding better ways to make manufactured goods. This is called entrepreneurship. Okay? Now, entrepreneurs wanted to create new businesses to increase the supply or amount of goods offered to meet the demand. This new way of doing business can be considered the beginning of a new economic system called capitalism. Capitalism is an economic system in which individuals and private businesses run most industries. Competition among these businesses affects how much goods cost. Okay? So in this case here, capitalism is supposed to be about the individual person or the individual business, not the government. Okay? Economies before this were all basically run by the king or the queen or whoever was in charge, the pharaoh, the emperor. Capitalism is run by the people, individuals. They make the decisions on what products to make. They make the decisions on what the product's going to look like, whatever it is. They also make the decision on what the cost is going to be, what they're going to sell the price of that product to the population. All right, go ahead and answer that second to last question. All right, here we go for our last part. Okay? The population growth of empires and cities naturally increased the size of markets as well. Markets are places where goods and services are sold and purchased. Competition among different businesses is most successful in a market economy. In a market economy, individuals decide what goods and services they will buy. As a result, businesses help meet the needs of individuals by supplying goods and services. The government does not decide what people can buy or sell. A market economy works on a balance between supply and demand. If there is a great demand for a product, a seller will increase the supply in order to make more money. Just the same the other way. If there's no demand for something, it goes away. Right? The ability of individuals to control how they make and spend money is a benefit of a market economy and capitalism. In the 1800s, capitalism would become the basis for most economic systems in the Western world. Western world is over here in the Western Hemisphere, Europe, places like that. Capitalism is what will make the United States the economic superpower that we became. Now, as you get further and further away from true capitalism, you start going to something called socialism, and that's natural. It's probably going to happen, but keeping government as much out of business as possible is how capitalism works. The other way the way government does kind of have to help out with capitalism is to make sure that there is competition. Make sure there is competition. You definitely want to have multiple businesses that are working against each other to make a product. Okay, it would be horrible if the only shoe manufacturer in our country was Nike. Okay, you might like Nikes, but if Nike was the only one, they certainly wouldn't be a very good product like they are now. Because Nike is good now because there is an Adidas, there is a Reebok, there is a Skechers or a Brooks or an Asics or whatever else. It's because of all those other shoe manufacturers, it makes Nike have to be good. Competition matters. All right, answer that last question, and we should be all done with this here, you guys. All right, thanks for going through this, and I'll see you next time.